Well, let's talk about panoramic photos. Panoramic photography is a technique of photography using specialized equipment or software which captures images with elongated fields of view. It's sometimes known as wide format photography. The term has also been applied to a photograph that is cropped to a relatively wide aspect ratio, which is the ratio of the width of the image to its height, expressed as two numbers separated by a colon. While there is no formal division between wide-angle and panoramic photography, wide-angle normally refers to a type of lens, but using this lens type does not necessarily make an image a panorama. An image made with an ultra-wide-angle fisheye lens covering the normal frame of 1 to 1.33 is not automatically considered to be a panorama. An image showing a field of view approximating or greater than that of the human eye, which is about 160 degrees by 75 degrees, may be termed panoramic. This generally means it has an aspect ratio of 2 to 1 or larger, the image being at least twice as wide as it is high. The resulting images take the form of a wide strip. Some panoramic images have aspect ratios of 4 to 1 and sometimes 10 to 1, covering fields of view of up to 360 degrees. When the desired shot is going to take up a wider field of view than the normal camera can take without backing up too far and getting too small of an image, it's time to turn to the panoramic image. These can be taken one of two ways. The most obvious is to use a wide-angle lens that is built to open up the aspect ratio of the shot. The concern of these types of photos is that if the wide-angle lens is too wide, it will take on the characteristics of what is called a fisheye aspect, as if you shot it in a fisheye lens, with the edges not being straight but rounded. It's as if you're looking through a fishbowl or a fisheye. This can also be called barrel distortion. Software has come to the rescue of creating effective panoramic shots. Instead of using a wider wide-angle lens and getting an even worse fisheye look, software programs allow agents to now create panoramic shots using a technique called stitching. With such software such as visualtours.com and others, the agent simply takes 3 or 4 shots of the room, overlapping each shot about 20% and keeping the shots even at the top. Then the shots are added to the software program to literally stitch each of the shots by matching up the individual pixels so as to create a panoramic shot that is actually 3 or 4 shots in one. Why use panoramic shots? Well, to showcase the seller's fantastic views from the balcony, the large living room or family room. Panoramas are especially effective to showcase how one room merges into another. All will increase home value. Back in the days of film cameras, creating a panoramic photo meant either buying a particularly expensive camera or hours of darkroom stitching images together by overlapping exposures onto the finished photo paper. Panoramic photos were the realm of the professional with the time and funds to create gorgeous, super wide-angle shots. But now, in the computer age, it's not only simple to create panoramic images on your home computer, it's become increasingly easier thanks to advances in software. There are still some general guidelines to follow to help you increase your odds of producing great photos, because remember, you can't fix everything in a computer after the fact. I've had a long learning curve in creating panoramic images, but I hope that these hints will give you specifics as to how to create stunning panoramic home images. 1. If your camera has a panoramic mode, use it. You might not know it, but most point-and-shoot cameras, beyond the most basic model, come with a little used mode for creating panoramic images. This mode serves a couple of functions. First, it will use the display on the camera to show your last picture taken and then a like view of the next picture. This is done to help you line up your images and overlap them. As I mentioned before, I will give more thought on this again. It also adjusts the camera to not change exposure settings in between shots as it normally would. This helps create even lighting through all the pictures, making stitching in the computer a lot easier. Although a number of modern programs will also level exposures fairly well. If you're taking a panoramic shot outside, shoot as close to midday as possible so that the sun doesn't play havoc with your exposure variances. Number 2, overlap amply. Overlapping is one of the more important areas in creating a panoramic image. Just one slip with not enough overlap can ruin an attempt at the grandest of wide-angle shots. No one wants to see pictures of the home's beautiful city or ocean view with a bar of white down the middle because of the failure to overlap properly. I overlap by 20 to 30% each time, sometimes more. Most people say 15% works just fine. Experiment with your particular camera to find the sweet spot of overlap. Increasing the amount of overlap helps reduce flaring that happens when the software is forced to use the entire image frame, including the corners, which may show distortion depending on your lens selection. Number 3, keep it on the level. Keeping your camera level becomes more important as you combine more images. Think of it this way. Your lens is a curved piece of glass. When held level, all parts of the scene in front of it come in and hit the sensor at roughly the same angle. But if you point the camera down, even slightly, you now have distant objects, like mountains, in the background coming in at a much sharper angle than foreground objects. For a single picture, this isn't a problem, but a panorama, it creates a fan effect, which is not so easily fixed in the computer. What this means is as you pan the camera left to right, the distant objects will fan out and may not have ample overlap. Further, they will be more distorted and curved because of the angle their light enters the camera. Well, number 4, choosing your metering well. Here's another lesson I learned the hard way. If you're using a DSLR or other camera that doesn't have that nifty panorama mode, you'll want to set your metering mode to manual. It's also important to even out your metering, meaning scan the entire scene, making note of the aperture and shutter speeds your camera is suggesting. Then pick one pair of settings in the middle, or slightly darker to make sure any sky details are preserved. With those shutter settings and aperture settings dialed in, it's time to shoot away. Number 5, check the scene for movement. Movement in the scene can be a thief of what you're otherwise going to shoot as a grand shot. Sometimes the blur or doubling up of people, cars, planes, or other moving objects is acceptable, but too many blurred spots, caused when the computer finds parts of the overlapping sections where things don't line up, can ruin the shot. It may mean you need to take the images very quickly, and sometimes that movement is just unavoidable. Number 6, be careful with super wide-angle lenses. A great wide-angle lens does not always produce wide panoramic shots. Sometimes it's better to let the stitching software do what it does best and make multiple passes of the same scene with ample overlap to create your masterpiece. Number 7, look up, look down, look all around. With new software, you're not limited to just a single pass from left to right to capture your desired image, so don't be afraid to make more than one pass. Start with the initial pass from left to right, or top to bottom, and then move up or down to grab more detail and make another pass. Remember the overlapping rule and how it will now pertain to not only the sides of the shot but also the top and bottom's overlaps. Keep it tight, and your image can have the added quality of extra skyline or foreground features previously missed. Number 8. Don't forget vertical panoramas. Vertical shots are often overlooked. The same principles apply to vertical shots as do horizontal images. These types of vertical shots can be very effective for grand stairways and high-ceiling fireplaces. It may help to turn the camera on its side, or you may find keeping the camera in a horizontal orientation works. Experiment a little with buildings and the outdoors, and then start looking for other verticals you can shoot. These are just a few of the basic guidelines to help you not make all the mistakes I've made in learning how to shoot panoramas over the years. You don't need fancy, expensive cameras to create nice panoramic images. Just a little know-how and practice. Panoramic photos use special equipment or software, capturing images with elongated fields of view. And with stitching software, the agent simply takes 3 or 4 overlapped shots, then the shots are matched up by individual pixels.